The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the rugged landscape of the mountain logging camp. A chill breeze rustled the pine needles, carrying with it the scent of earth and pine resin, mingling with the faint odor of smoke from a nearby fire. Bill, a practical cowboy with the weathered hands of a man who had spent his life wrangling cattle and carving a place in this wild frontier, rode in with a determined look etched on his sun-kissed face. His steed plodded steadily along the narrow trail, the sound of hooves crunching over the gravel echoing in the stillness. Beside him trotted Roger, a German shepherd of notable size, his sleek coat glinting in the fading light. The dog's ears perked up at every rustle of leaves or distant call of a crow, as if he sensed something that lay just beyond the edge of perception. Bill admired the dog's instincts, having come to rely on Roger's keen senses, especially in a land where danger could spring from shadows as easily as from man. "Looks like we made it, partner," Bill remarked, pulling back on the reins as they approached the clearing that housed the old logging camp. The main cabin, a relic of weather-beaten wood and faded paint, stood stoically amid the tall pines, as if it were an old soldier standing guard over a forgotten battle. The windows were dark, the door slightly ajar, creaking softly in the wind like a whisper from the past. As they dismounted, Bill felt a shiver crawl up his spine, the air suddenly turning frigid, as if the warmth of the day had been snatched away in an instant. "What in tarnation?" he muttered, rubbing his arms against the unexpected cold. Roger, ever alert, growled low in his throat, his stance tense. The cowboy furrowed his brow, glancing around the clearing. "Ain't nothing but us and the ghosts of this place, I reckon." The camp was eerily silent, the only sound the soft rustle of the leaves, which seemed to whisper secrets of the long-forgotten lumberjacks who had once called this place home. Bill stepped cautiously toward the cabin, his boot crunching over a carpet of pine needles and scattered stones. "You'd think with all this wood round, they'd have built something a mite sturdier," he mused, shaking his head at the sagging structure. He pushed the door open wider, and it creaked in protest, as if reluctant to reveal its hidden memories. Inside, shadows danced in the flickering light of the setting sun, creating a tapestry of shapes on the rough-hewn walls. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, thick enough to stir the imagination. The remnants of old furniture lay scattered about, an overturned chair, a rusted lantern, and a table where many a meal had been shared. Roger stepped inside, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air, ears perked high, alert for any disturbance. Bill followed closely behind, his heart thumping steadily in his chest, not from fear, but from the thrill of adventure that had beckoned him since childhood. This place was as much a part of the frontier as the mountains that loomed outside, a testament to the lives lived and lost in the pursuit of timber and gold. "I reckon we ought to make camp," he declared, pulling out a rough blanket from his saddlebag. "Ain't no sense in being caught out in the dark round here, especially if there's a ghost or two lurking about." The chill deepened as twilight settled over the camp, and Bill felt a prickle of unease crawling along his spine. He glanced at Roger, who was now standing at the edge of the cabin, staring intently into the gathering shadows, as though he could see something that eluded Bill's own eyes. "What's the matter, boy?" Bill asked, his voice low and steady. "You seein' something I ain't?" Before Roger could answer with a bark or a tilt of his head, the temperature dropped again, a gust of icy wind sweeping through the cabin and making the old timbers creak as though the very structure were alive with a shiver. Bill's breath fogged in front of him, and he instinctively moved closer to the fire pit, his instincts kicking into high gear. "We best light a fire and chase away these ghosts," he murmured. With swift movements, Bill gathered kindling and struck a match, the flame flickering to life with a soft pop. As he fed the fire with dry wood, he noticed Roger stiffening once more, a low growl rumbling deep in his throat. Bill turned to follow the dog's gaze, and for a fleeting moment he thought he saw a figure, a shadow among shadows, hovering just at the edge of the trees, a whisper of white against the darkening pines. "Now that ain't right," Bill said, gripping the edge of the fire pit, his heart pounding with a mix of curiosity and dread. The world felt different, thick with an air of mystery that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "What have we stumbled into, old friend?" As the fire crackled and illuminated the cabin's interior, Bill knew one thing for certain. Something was amiss in this old logging camp, and he and Roger were right in the thick of it. The chill in the air had more to tell than mere temperature. It spoke of secrets buried deep within the earth and time, and Bill was determined to uncover them, even if it led him down a path that few had tread before. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky as Bill settled himself on a rough-hewn stump, eyeing Roger, who remained tense and watchful. The old dog's nose quivered, and his ears flicked back and forth like radar, picking up sounds that eluded Bill's ears. He could feel the atmosphere thickening, charged with something unseen and unsettling. "All right, boy," Bill said, scratching Roger behind the ears. "Let's see what we can turn up in this ghostly place." He rose, grabbing a lantern that hung crookedly on the wall, its glass dusty but still intact. He struck another match, the flame illuminating the dark corners of the cabin for a fleeting moment, before he lit the lantern and set it on the table, casting a warm glow that fought against the encroaching shadows. With the light in hand, he stepped cautiously out onto the creaking porch, the wooden boards groaning beneath his weight. "Ain't nothing like a bit of old wood to remind a fella of his own bones," he muttered, glancing back at the cabin, where the fire flickered behind him. "You keep watch, Roger. I'll see what's what." Roger, still on high alert, followed closely, his instincts guiding him as they ventured toward the trees that loomed like silent sentinels. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something more, a hint of decay mingled with pine. Bill felt a chill run down his spine. "This place has seen more than its share of sorrow, I reckon," he said, more to himself than to the dog. They moved deeper into the woods, the lantern's glow casting long shadows that danced ominously among the trees. Bill scanned the ground, searching for anything that might explain the unease that hung in the air. His eyes caught sight of a series of uneven footprints, half concealed by fallen leaves. "Well, ain't that curious?" he mused, kneeling to examine them more closely. They were larger than his own boots, with a strange, elongated shape. What kind of creature leaves tracks like this? Before he could ponder further, Roger suddenly stopped, his body tense as a drawn bowstring. The dog stared intently at a gnarled tree to their left, the trunk twisted and blackened as if struck by lightning. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked softly, moving closer to the tree. The dog didn't budge, his growl deepening, resonating with an eerie, unsettling quality. Bill reached out, brushing his fingers against the rough bark. "Something tells me we ain't alone out here." Just then, a soft rustle from the underbrush made both man and dog jump. The sound came from behind a bush, and Bill squinted into the darkness, trying to discern the source. A flash of white caught his eye, and he leaned closer, heart racing. It was a scrap of fabric caught on a low branch, fluttering like a ghostly banner. Bill reached out, tugging gently to free it. As the fabric came loose, he noticed the color, a faded blue, reminiscent of the old uniforms worn by soldiers in days gone by. "Now, what do we have here?" he murmured, holding the fabric up to the lantern's light. It bore the unmistakable insignia of a long-forgotten regiment. "Seems like the past ain't ready to be buried just yet," he said, a thrill of excitement coursing through him. This was a clue, a piece of the puzzle that might lead to the truth about this cursed place. He folded the fabric carefully and tucked it into his pocket, feeling a sense of purpose swell within him. Roger's ears perked up again, snapping Bill from his thoughts. The dog took a few cautious steps forward, sniffing the air with a newfound urgency. Bill followed, the lantern swinging gently in his grasp. "You sense something, don't you, boy?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, Roger darted off the trail, moving toward a thicket of brambles. "Hey now! Where you off to?" Bill called, jogging after him. He pushed through the underbrush, the brambles snagging at his coat, and there, just beyond the thicket, he found Roger standing over something half buried in the ground. The dog's tail wagged furiously, a mix of excitement and something else, anticipation. Bill knelt beside him, brushing away the leaves and dirt with his hands. What lay beneath was a small wooden box, weathered but intact, its hinges rusted shut. "Well, I'll be," he whispered, his heart racing. "Looks like we've found ourselves a treasure, boy." He glanced around, ensuring they were still alone before he began prying the box open. With a few firm nudges from a nearby rock, the lid creaked open, and a cloud of dust erupted, catching the light of the lantern. Inside lay a collection of old coins, their surfaces tarnished but still gleaming faintly. Bill's eyes widened as he realized their worth. This was no ordinary find. "Sweet mercy, Roger, we might have just struck gold," he said, a grin spreading across his face. But as he reached for the coins, a sudden chill swept through the clearing, and he paused, feeling an otherworldly presence brush against him. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words and lingering spirits. The dog whined softly, his gaze shifting over Bill's shoulder, and the cowboy turned, his pulse quickening. In the distance, he swore he could hear the echoes of voices carried by the wind, faint and sorrowful, mingling with the rustle of the leaves. It was as if the very forest was trying to tell him something, warning him of the secrets that lay entwined within the coins and the fabric of the past. "Looks like we've opened a can of worms, Roger," he said, his voice steady despite the growing unease. "We best tread carefully from here on out. This ain't just about a treasure anymore. It's about the history buried beneath it." Ubrit dutu, with renewed determination, Bill gathered the coins, tucking them into his saddlebag alongside the fabric, and stood up, glancing around as though the trees themselves were watching. "Let's head back, partner. There's more to this than meets the eye, and I reckon we ain't done unearthing it yet." As they made their way back to the cabin, the night deepened around them, and the shadows grew long, a tapestry of the past weaving itself into the present. Bill felt the weight of history pressing down, and with each step, he knew he was not just a broken cowboy trying to make sense of his inheritance. He was a man on the brink of uncovering a mystery that had lain dormant for too long. As Bill and Roger made their way back to the cabin, the moon hung high in the night sky, casting a silvery glow over the rugged landscape. The air was crisp, laced with the earthy scent of pine and damp soil, and every rustle in the underbrush sent a shiver of anticipation down Bill's spine. He could feel it in his bones. The past was alive here, whispering secrets that had long been buried. "Easy now, Roger," he murmured as the dog trotted close, his ears perked and nose twitching. "I reckon we'll be back to that spot soon enough. We still got a score to settle with whatever spirits linger about." The dog responded with a low whine, his eyes darting toward the shadows that danced at the edges of the clearing, as if he sensed the same ethereal tension that had settled over Bill. Once they reached the cabin, Bill set down his lantern, its flickering light casting warm, flickering shadows against the wooden walls. He plopped the saddlebag onto the table, the coins inside clinking together like distant bells, and pulled out the fabric. It was softer than he had expected, and he could see now that it was a fragment of a uniform shirt, perhaps once belonging to a soldier long gone. The insignia, a faded blue star surrounded by a wreath, seemed to shimmer in the lantern's light, as if it held secrets just out of reach. Bill spread the fabric out across the table and examined it closely. "What story do you hold, old friend?" he whispered, running his fingers over the worn threads. A faint rustle outside made him pause, and he glanced toward the window, half expecting to see a spectre hovering just beyond the glass. But nothing stirred, only the gentle sway of the branches in the night breeze. He needed to know more about the regiment represented on the cloth. "If only I had my old books," he grumbled to himself, thinking back to the dusty volumes he'd left behind in town. But Bill was nothing if not resourceful. With a determined gleam in his eye, he grabbed a pencil and a scrap of paper, sketching the insignia as best as he could remember. "I'll head into town come morning, find some folks who know their history. Maybe someone will recognize this." "Roger, sensing his master's growing excitement, gave a soft bark and nudged the saddlebag with his nose. "All right, I hear you, boy. Let's see what else we got here." Bill opened the bag and carefully removed the coins, placing them on the table one by one. Each was stamped with the face of a long-gone president, their edges worn and dulled by time. But one coin caught his eye, a shimmering gold piece that seemed almost out of place among its silver companions. "That right there looks like it might be worth a penny or two," he said, holding it up to the lantern light. "Could be we've struck more than gold here." The coin was engraved with the date 1864, a year that rang alarm bells in Bill's mind. It was during the heart of the Civil War, a time when fortunes were made and lost, and men found themselves drawn into conflict for reasons they barely understood. Roger whined again, drawing Bill's attention back to the room. The dog's gaze was fixed on the door, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, squinting into the darkness beyond the wooden frame. The cabin felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier, as if the very walls were closing in. He took a step toward the door, ready to confront whatever specter might lurk outside. But Roger stood his ground, the muscles in his shoulders tense, the hair on his back bristling. "All right, let's not go stirring up trouble, partner," Bill said, his voice steady but tinged with unease. He walked over to the door, peeking through a crack. The moonlight illuminated the yard, casting long shadows that crept like fingers across the ground. There was nothing there, but the silence felt charged, as if something unseen was holding its breath. "Guess I'm jumpy, eh?" he muttered, stepping back and closing the door. "Let's call it a night, Roger. We'll pick this up in the morning." But as he turned away, he couldn't shake the feeling that the night was still alive with the whispers of the past. After securing the door, Bill made his way back to the table, where the coins lay scattered like forgotten dreams. He felt a strange pull toward the gold piece, as if it were calling to him, urging him to uncover its secrets. "There's more to this than meets the eye," he said, determination hardening in his voice. "We're going to get to the bottom of it, one way or another." With that, he gathered up the coins and the fabric, tucking them safely away for the night. He knew that whatever history lay entwined in those items, it would not rest easy until its story was told. And as he settled down in his chair, Roger lying at his feet, Bill felt the weight of the past pressing against him, a reminder that sometimes the dead have tales they're desperate to share, and it was up to the living to listen. The frontier might seem still, but beneath its surface, secrets simmered, waiting to be revealed. Morning light crept through the grimy window panes, casting a pale glow across the cabin's rough-hewn walls. Bill stirred in his chair, the remnants of dreams tangled with thoughts of the night before. He stretched, wincing as his muscles protested the chill that had settled in. Roger lay at his feet, his ears perked up, ready to spring into action at the slightest hint of movement. "Rise and shine, old fella," Bill murmured, ruffling the dog's ears. "We got a town to visit and some history to dig up." The cabin, with its creaking floorboards and lingering scent of wood smoke, felt more alive in the daylight, but Bill could sense that whatever secrets lay hidden in the folds of the past were still waiting to be uncovered. After a quick breakfast of biscuits and gravy, Bill packed the saddlebag with the old coins and the tattered piece of uniform he'd found. Roger trotted excitedly beside him as they made their way to the door, the morning air crisp and invigorating. The sun hung low in the sky, promising a warm day despite the chill of the night's remnants. Bill mounted his old mare, Dusty, while Roger hopped up into the saddlebag with an eager yip. "You ready for a ride, partner?" he asked, patting Dusty's neck. She snorted and shook her mane, as if eager to be off on an adventure. They set out, the rhythmic clop of hooves against the dirt road the only sound accompanying them. As they made their way into town, Bill's mind whirled with questions. He recalled the tales the old-timers shared at the saloon, stories of soldiers, lost treasure, and the restless spirits that roamed the valley, forever tied to the land they'd fought for. He had to find someone who knew about the insignia, someone who could help him piece together the mystery that gnawed at him. The town of Dry Gulch was a far cry from the sprawling metropolises back east. It was a rugged place where sun-bleached buildings leaned against each other as if seeking solace from the relentless winds. Dust swirled around the street, kicked up by the occasional passing wagon, and the smell of smoke from the blacksmith's forge hung heavy in the air. Bill tethered Dusty outside the general store and stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. "Morning, Bill," greeted the storekeeper, a stout man named Hank, with a face as worn as the leather apron he wore. "What brings you in today? Got some new tales to share?" "More like looking for some, Hank," Bill replied, glancing around the store filled with goods ranging from canned beans to ropes. "I stumbled upon something curious out at my place. Thought maybe you'd know a thing or two about it." He laid the uniform fragment on the counter, careful to keep it flat. Hank squinted at the insignia, his fingers brushing over the fabric. "Well, I'll be a rattlesnake's cousin. That there's a soldier's uniform from the Union Army. Mighty rare find, Bill. You don't see many of these around these parts. You know, a few years back, there was talk of a skirmish not too far from here. Folks said some soldiers went missing. Never did find their bodies. Could be connected." A chill ran down Bill's spine. "You reckon it could be related to lost treasure?" Hank scratched his beard, pondering. "Could be. You never know with these old stories. Word has it, one of the soldiers was carrying a pouch filled with gold coins when they vanished. Folks thought they buried it out there, but no one's been able to find a trace." Roger, who had been standing attentively by Bill's side, let out a low growl, his eyes fixed on the doorway. Bill turned, catching a glimpse of a shadow moving just outside. The door swung open, and in walked a tall man with a weathered face, his hat pulled low over his brow. "What's all this talk about lost treasure?" he asked, his voice gravelly as he leaned against the doorframe. Hank straightened, eyeing the newcomer suspiciously. "Ain't none of your business, Jake. You best be minding your own affairs." The man, Jake, chuckled darkly. "Everything's connected in these parts, Hank. You know that as well as I do. Bill here might just be stirring up more than he bargained for." Bill felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you mean by that?" Jake stepped closer, his eyes glinting with a mix of mischief and menace. "Stories have a way of attracting attention, especially the ones that involve gold. You best be careful where you go digging around, Bill. Not everyone wants the past to resurface." Before Bill could respond, Roger let out a sharp bark, breaking the tension like a twig underfoot. The dog was on high alert, his body tense and ready. "Easy, Roger," Bill said, placing a calming hand on the dog's back. Jake took a step back, raising his hands in mock surrender. All right, I'll leave you be. Just remember, some stones are best left unturned." With that, he tipped his hat and walked out, leaving an uneasy silence hanging in the air. Hank let out a breath, shaking his head. "That fella's trouble, Bill. You watch yourself around him." "I will," Bill replied, a sense of foreboding settling in his chest. He knew he was onto something bigger than he had initially thought, and as he gathered his belongings, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. "Let's head back to the cabin, Roger," he said, steeling himself for the journey ahead. The dog barked in agreement, his instincts sharp as ever. Bill mounted Dusty, feeling the energy of the frontier around him, both thrilling and terrifying. The secrets of the past were rising, and he could feel the echoes of restless souls calling him forth, urging him to unravel their tangled story. And as they trotted down the sunlit path, Bill realized he was no longer just a broken cowboy. He was becoming a part of a much larger tale, one that might just lead him to the hidden treasure of a lifetime, or unleash dangers he could hardly imagine. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty path as Bill and Roger made their way back to the cabin. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and the promise of a coming storm, dark clouds rolling in from the west. Bill kept his eyes peeled, feeling the weight of Jake's warning heavy on his mind. Dusty trotted steadily beneath him, the horse's hooves thudding softly against the hard-packed earth. As they approached the cabin, a sense of unease crept over Bill. He dismounted and tied Dusty to the hitching post, while Roger sniffed the ground, nose to the trail, his ears perked up, listening for any sign of trouble. "Easy, boy," Bill murmured, resting a hand on Roger's back. "We'll figure this out together." Once inside the cabin, Bill grabbed a lantern from the shelf and lit it, the flickering flame casting dancing shadows on the walls. He moved over to the old wooden table and spread out the fragment of the soldier's uniform, tracing the fabric with his fingers. "What do you think, Roger?" he asked the dog, who sat nearby, head tilted as if considering the question. Could there be more out there, hidden away, just waiting for someone to find it? Roger gave a soft whine, his instinctual wisdom evident in his attentive gaze. Bill pulled out a map he'd sketched of the area, marking spots of interest, including the location where he'd found the uniform. There were whispers among the old-timers of the town, tales of ghostly figures wandering the hills near the site of the skirmish where the soldiers had gone missing. "Seems like a good place to start," Bill said, his finger tracing a line across the parchment. "If there's treasure to be found, it's likely near where they laid to rest." As he prepared to head out, Roger suddenly perked up, barking sharply and dashing toward the window. Bill followed his gaze and saw a flicker of movement near the edge of the property. "What is it, boy?" he asked, concern etching lines across his forehead. Roger's growl was low and deep, his instincts flaring. Bill grabbed his rifle from the wall and cautiously made his way to the door. The wind picked up, swirling dust around his boots as he stepped outside. "You stay close, Roger," he whispered, scanning the horizon. They moved toward the barn, a shadowy outline against the darkening sky. Bill felt a chill creep down his spine, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end as he approached the structure. "No one's supposed to be here," he muttered under his breath. Roger paused, sniffing the air, then darted ahead, leading the way. As they rounded the corner of the barn, Bill stopped short, his breath catching in his throat. There, illuminated by the waning light, stood a figure. A woman in a long, flowing white dress, her hair cascading like dark water over her shoulders. She seemed to shimmer in the twilight, her expression haunting yet sorrowful. "Who are you?" Bill called out, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. The figure turned slowly, her eyes locking onto his. "I am the keeper of lost things," she replied, her voice soft and echoing like a distant breeze. "The echoes of the past linger here, and you've stirred them from their slumber." Bill felt a shiver run down his spine. "What do you mean? Are you a ghost?" The woman nodded, a faint smile gracing her lips. "I have watched over this land for many years. Those who vanished left more than just their bodies behind. They left their secrets buried in the soil." Bill glanced at Roger, who stood firm, watching the apparition with a mix of curiosity and caution. "And what secrets are those?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Gold, yes, but also the sorrow of unfinished business," the woman replied, her gaze penetrating. "You must seek the truth behind the lost soldiers. They were betrayed, and their treasure lies beneath the weight of their grief. You found a piece of their story, but the rest is hidden deeper. You must tread carefully." "Where do I begin?" Bill asked, his heart racing with a mix of fear and fascination. The woman extended her arm, pointing toward the hills in the distance. The old oak tree on the ridge. Beneath it, the answers await. But beware, for the past has its protectors. Not all who seek treasure are worthy. Before Bill could respond, she began to fade into the shadows, her figure dissolving like mist in the morning sun. "Wait," he called, reaching out, but it was too late. The wind picked up, swirling around him, leaving only silence in its wake. Roger let out a low bark, bringing Bill back to the present. "Did you see that, boy?" Bill whispered, his mind racing. "A ghost, a real ghost." With newfound determination, he turned toward the hills. "We've got work to do, Roger. Let's get moving." The duo set off toward the ridge, the sun dipping lower, casting an orange glow across the landscape. The air grew cooler, and with each step, the weight of history pressed upon them. Secrets buried beneath the earth whispered promises of fortune and danger, and Bill knew in his bones that he was on the brink of something extraordinary, something that might either lift the veil on the past or plunge him into its dark depths. As they climbed, Bill felt Roger's tension radiate beside him, the dog's instincts attuned to the unseen. Shadows danced across the ground, and the wind howled like a restless spirit. With each heartbeat, the mystery deepened, pulling him closer to the heart of the tale, the lost soldiers, the treasure, and the spectre that had revealed a path through the darkness. As Bill and Roger trekked toward the old oak tree, the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, painting the sky in hues of crimson and violet. The air grew thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the distant call of a coyote echoed through the canyons, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Bill adjusted his grip on the rifle, feeling the familiar weight of it settle against his shoulder like an old friend. "Just you and me now, Roger," he muttered, glancing down at the dog, whose eyes glinted with intelligence and purpose. The terrain became more rugged, the path overgrown with brush and brambles. But Bill pressed on. "Ain't no ghost gonna scare me off," he declared, more to bolster his own courage than anything else. Roger barked in agreement, his ears perked, nose twitching as he sniffed the air for any signs of danger. There was something in the wind, a whisper of the past that sent shivers through Bill's bones. As they approached the ridge, Bill noticed something odd. Scratches on the bark of the old oak tree, deep and jagged, as if something had clawed at it. "What in tarnation?" he mused, stepping closer. The grooves ran up the trunk, spiraling like the twisted tails of the land. What could have made these marks? Roger sniffed around the base of the tree, his tail stiffening. He pawed at the ground, revealing patches of disturbed earth. "You find something, boy?" Bill knelt beside him, brushing away the loose soil with his fingers. The dirt had an unusual reddish hue, almost like rust. Might be more than just the wind blowing around here. With a renewed sense of purpose, Bill began to dig, using the edge of his rifle to scrape at the earth. Sweat beaded on his brow as he worked, the moon beginning to rise, casting a silver glow over the scene. The air felt charged, thick with anticipation. "Let's see what's hidden here," he said, his voice low but steady. Just then, Roger let out a sharp bark, his body tense as he turned his gaze toward the horizon. Bill paused, looking up to see what had caught the dog's attention. A shadow flickered at the edge of the clearing, moving with an unnatural grace. "What in the world?" Bill murmured, his heart racing. The figure was too far to make out clearly, but it wasn't human. It moved with an otherworldly fluidity, almost as if it floated above the ground. "Stay close, Roger," he whispered, his voice barely rising above the wind. Bill resumed digging, but his mind raced with questions. What lay beneath the roots of the oak? Was it treasure, or was it something more sinister, guarded by the very spirits that haunted this land? After several minutes of labor, the tip of something hard poked through the soil. Bill's pulse quickened as he carefully unearthed it, revealing a rusted metal box, its corners rounded from years spent, buried beneath the earth. "Well, would you look at that?" he said, brushing off the dirt with trembling hands. "We might just be onto something." He pried open the lid, the rusty hinges creaking like an old door long forgotten. Inside lay a tangle of faded papers, a small leather pouch, and an odd assortment of trinkets that shimmered in the moonlight. "Looks like we struck gold, Roger," he said, his eyes wide with wonder. As he sifted through the contents, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it a soft, mournful wail. Bill froze, the hair on the back of his neck standing tall. "Did you hear that?" he asked, looking down at Roger, who had grown still. His ears perked as he scanned the night. The papers, yellowed with age, were maps and letters, each one scrawled with hurried ink. Bill unfolded one, revealing a hastily drawn map of the area, marked with cryptic symbols, and a bold X near the ridge. "Looks like we ain't the first to be hunting these secrets," he murmured, his excitement mingling with caution. Roger's growl rumbled softly, his instincts heightened. Bill followed the dog's gaze, spotting the shadowy figure again, this time closer, watching them from the edge of the trees. "I reckon we might have company," he said, his heart pounding in his chest. "Let's not stick around too long." With the box tucked under his arm, Bill led Roger back down the path, retracing their steps toward home. The presence of the figure loomed in his mind, a chilling reminder that some secrets were best left undisturbed. The treasure could hold answers, but at what cost? As they reached the barn, the night seemed to thicken around them, the air heavy with anticipation. Bill's thoughts raced with the implications of what he had found. "We need to figure this out. And fast," he said, glancing back toward the trees. "Whatever's out there, I don't want it following us." Once inside, he set the box on the table, the flickering lantern casting eerie shadows across the walls. Roger lay at his feet, ever vigilant, his eyes darting toward the door as if expecting trouble. Bill carefully examined the letters, deciphering the faded ink. They spoke of betrayal, of soldiers left to die, and a treasure meant to be shared among comrades, now lost to time and treachery. Suddenly the lantern flickered, and the air grew colder. Bill felt a shiver run down his spine. The ghostly woman's words echoed in his mind. "Not all who seek treasure are worthy." A sense of foreboding settled over him like a heavy blanket. "Whatever we've stirred up, Roger," he said quietly, "it ain't done with us yet." And as the wind howled outside, Bill couldn't shake the feeling that the past was closing in, its secrets waiting to be unveiled, and perhaps ready to exact its own form of justice. The lantern cast flickering shadows that danced along the barn walls, creating an atmosphere thick with unease. Bill stared at the box as if it might spring to life, revealing its secrets in a burst of light. He brushed his fingers over the leather pouch, its surface cracked and weathered like the hands of a man who had seen too much in a hard life. "Let's see what you're holding," he muttered, carefully untying the fraying string. As he opened the pouch, a collection of small, glinting coins tumbled out, each one marked with symbols he didn't recognize. They sparkled like stars against the rough wood of the table, but their beauty was marred by an unsettling feeling that washed over him. Where in tarnation did these come from? He pondered aloud, scooping them back into the pouch with a mix of fascination and dread. Roger, ever alert, lifted his head, ears twitching at the sound of something beyond the barn. Bill glanced at the dog, who was now sitting upright, body taut and ready. "What is it, boy?" he asked, straining to listen. The wind whistled through the cracks in the barn, carrying whispers that seemed to weave tales of their own. Roger let out a low growl, his gaze fixed on the door, eyes glowing with an intelligence that belied his age. Bill stepped cautiously to the door, heart thumping like a drumbeat in the stillness. "Don't you fret, old friend," he said, placing a hand on Roger's head, feeling the reassuring warmth of the dog's fur. "I reckon we'll get to the bottom of this." Outside, the moon hung high, casting silver rays that illuminated the path to the ridge marked on the map. Bill's curiosity gnawed at him, a relentless itch he couldn't ignore. "Let's take a gander up yonder," he said, motioning for Roger to follow. The dog rose immediately, tail wagging with a blend of excitement and caution. Together, they stepped into the cool night, the world around them alive with the sounds of the frontier, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird, and the ever-present hum of the land. The trek to the ridge was marked by the crunch of dried leaves and twigs beneath their boots. Bill kept the map folded in his pocket, occasionally glancing at it to reassure himself he was on the right path. The symbols seemed to whisper secrets as he walked, urging him onward with every step. "I reckon if there's more to find, it's gonna take a bit of elbow grease," he said to Roger, who trotted close, eyes scanning the darkness. As they crested the ridge, the view opened up like a well-worn book, the valley sprawling beneath them, bathed in the moon's ethereal glow. "Would you look at that?" Bill breathed, taking in the beauty that was both breathtaking and haunting. The land was silent now, but Bill felt the weight of history pressing down on him, an invisible force urging him to uncover what lay hidden beneath the surface. He knelt at the edge, peering down into the valley, where shadows shifted unnaturally. A chill crept into the air, and the hair on the back of his neck prickled. "Something's not right," he muttered, glancing down at Roger, who remained alert, eyes fixed on the trees that lined the valley floor. Suddenly, a sharp bark erupted from the dog, followed by a low growl that rumbled like distant thunder. Bill followed Roger's line of sight, heart racing as he spotted a flicker of light through the trees. "What in the name of all that's holy is that?" he exclaimed, his curiosity piqued and trepidation mounting. "Let's go check it out, but keep your wits about you," he instructed Roger, who seemed to understand the weight of the moment. They made their way down the ridge, each step deliberate, the underbrush crackling beneath their boots. As they approached the source of the light, Bill felt an unsettling sense of being watched, as if the very spirits of the land were observing their every move. The light grew brighter, revealing a clearing that held a curious sight. In the center stood an old, gnarled tree, its roots twisted like the fingers of a skeletal hand, reaching for the sky. Beneath it, the ground was disturbed, dark soil churned as if something had recently been unearthed. The light emanated from a small orb that floated just above the ground, pulsating gently, casting eerie shadows around the clearing. "What in tarnation?" Bill whispered, captivated yet cautious. The orb shimmered with an inviting glow, drawing him closer, but Roger pulled back, growling softly, an instinctive warning. "Easy there, Roger," Bill said, trying to calm the dog's unease. "We gotta see what this is." He stepped forward, hand outstretched, when a sudden gust of wind whipped through the clearing, extinguishing the light in an instant. The air turned heavy, thick with a palpable tension, and Bill felt the presence of something ancient and powerful. A voice echoed in his mind, soft yet firm. "Beware, seeker. Not all that glimmers is gold." Bill stumbled back, heart racing, as the orb vanished, leaving only the faintest impression of its brilliance behind. "What the devil just happened?" he murmured, glancing at Roger, whose ears were still perked, eyes darting toward the tree line. "We ain't alone here," he said, feeling the chill deepen around him. "We need to get back to the barn and figure this out." As they retraced their steps, the weight of the night pressed upon them, every shadow seeming to whisper secrets long buried. Bill couldn't shake the feeling that the ghostly woman had been right. They were not the first to seek the treasure, and whatever else lay hidden in the valley, it wouldn't rest easy until its story was told. The night hummed with a restless energy, as if the land itself held its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Bill and Roger made their way back up the ridge, the moonlight illuminating the path like a silver ribbon stretching across the darkened land. The world around them felt alive, each rustle in the brush echoing with the mysteries that cloaked the valley below. Bill's mind raced, piecing together the snippets of information he had gathered since inheriting this forsaken homestead. He could feel the weight of his father's legacy resting on his shoulders, a legacy intertwined with secrets that had yet to be revealed. "Darn it all," he muttered, shaking his head as they reached the top. That light was no ordinary lantern. "I reckon we've stumbled onto something that folks around here don't want disturbed." He glanced down at Roger, who stood firm, a sentinel watching over his master. "You keep that nose sharp, boy. We ain't gonna let whatever that was get the drop on us again." With a reassuring pat on Roger's head, Bill took a moment to catch his breath, the crisp night air filling his lungs. The land sprawled before him, a patchwork of fields and woods that had once thrived under the sun. Now it seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to stir. A distant howl from a coyote echoed through the valley, reminding Bill that they were not the only ones wandering the night. Back at the barn, Bill gathered his tools, the simple implements of a life spent in hard labor. He lit a lantern, its soft glow flickering against the wood beams, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms. "Let's see what we can rustle up," he said, setting down a shovel and a pickaxe. He felt a surge of determination coursing through him. It was high time to dig into the earth, not just for the treasure that might lie buried, but for the truth of the land itself. As he stepped outside, lantern in hand, Roger trotted alongside him, eyes alert, ears perked for any sign of disturbance. "You're a good hound, Roger," Bill remarked, his voice low, "but I got a feeling we're about to stir up some trouble." They made their way toward the clearing again, the moonlight casting ghostly patterns on the ground. The old tree loomed before them, its gnarled branches swaying gently in the night breeze. "This here tree," Bill said, brushing his hand against the rough bark, "looks like it's seen its fair share of stories. I reckon it might be hiding more than just dirt." He set the lantern down and took the shovel in hand, kneeling beside the disturbed soil. With a few swift strokes, he turned the earth over, the scent of dampness mingling with the sweet decay of fallen leaves. "Come on, Roger," he said, half hoping the dog would help him sniff out whatever lay buried. Roger sniffed the ground, then lifted his nose toward the trees, ears twitching as if he could hear a whisper in the wind. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, squinting into the darkness where Roger focused his gaze. "You smell something I don't?" Before Roger could respond, a gust of wind swirled around them, carrying with it a sound, a low, mournful moan that sent a shiver up Bill's spine. He glanced at Roger, who stood rigid, a low growl rumbling deep in his throat. "That don't sound friendly," Bill said, heart pounding in his chest. He straightened, gripping the shovel tightly. "Whatever's out there, it ain't here for a chat." He dug deeper, sweat beading on his brow as he worked the soil, unease settling like a stone in his gut. Each time the shovel struck something solid, Bill's heart raced. He unearthed roots and rocks, but the sensation of being watched persisted, a presence lurking just beyond the edge of the trees. "You're not gonna scare me off that easy," he muttered defiantly, striking the ground with renewed vigor. After a few moments, the shovel clinked against something hard. Bill stopped, breath held, and cleared away the dirt with his hands, revealing a tarnished metal box, about the size of a shoebox, its surface pitted and rusted. "Well, I'll be," he whispered, excitement bubbling to the surface. "Now, we're getting somewhere." He pried the box open, the hinges creaking like the old bones of a long-forgotten settler. Inside lay a collection of faded papers, a small velvet pouch, and an assortment of old coins, their faces barely discernible. "Looks like we hit the jackpot, Roger," Bill exclaimed, his voice a mixture of thrill and disbelief. "But what in tarnation is this?" As he rifled through the contents, a slip of paper caught his eye, yellowed with age and frayed at the edges. It bore a map, crude and hastily drawn, leading to another location in the valley. "Now this here is a mystery," Bill said, holding it up to the lantern light. "Seems like we've got more to uncover than just this old box." Roger sniffed at the papers, eyes flickering back toward the tree line, a growl rumbling in his chest once more. Bill glanced up, feeling a chill creep over him. "What's got you so spooked, old friend?" he asked. But even as he spoke, he felt the air grow heavier, the night deepening around them. The map in his hand pulsed with an odd warmth, as if alive with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Just then, a low whisper floated through the trees, a voice barely more than a breath on the wind. "Seeker, seeker, find the truth." Bill's heart raced, every instinct urging him to flee, but he stood his ground, determined to face whatever lay ahead. "I ain't afraid of you," he shouted into the darkness, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. Roger barked, a fierce sound that echoed through the clearing, and Bill felt a surge of courage. Whatever spirit lingered in the shadows, whatever treasure awaited him, he would confront it. "We're gonna get to the bottom of this, boy," he vowed, glancing down at the map again. "And I'll be damned if I let the night swallow us whole." With a resolute nod, he tucked the map into his pocket and lifted the lantern higher, the flame flickering defiantly against the encroaching darkness. Together, they would uncover the secrets that lay buried in the valley, for better or worse. The night had only just begun, and its mysteries beckoned them forth, like the call of the wild, urging them to tread deeper into the unknown. Bill squared his shoulders, the weight of the night pressing down on him as he shifted his focus from the box to the map. The crude lines and hastily drawn symbols hinted at a trail that wound deeper into the valley, toward the darkened hills in the distance. "Looks like we got ourselves a treasure hunt, Roger," he said, glancing down at the dog, who remained tense, his ears perked up like a sentry on guard. Roger nudged Bill's hand, his eyes glinting in the lantern light, as if urging him to get a move on. "You got it, boy," Bill murmured, his heart pounding with anticipation. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand, the cool night air a relief against the warmth of his skin. "Let's see what these old bones have to say." He took one last look at the box, its contents now safely tucked away in his satchel. The whispers still danced in the trees, a low hum that tickled the edge of his consciousness. With a deep breath, he stepped into the darkened path that the map suggested, lantern held high, the flickering light creating wavering shadows that danced along the trunks of ancient oaks. As they walked, the sound of crunching leaves underfoot filled the air, mingling with the distant call of an owl and the rustle of unseen creatures in the underbrush. Roger trotted beside him, alert and watchful, his nose twitching as he sniffed the cool night air. Bill couldn't shake the feeling that the dog was attuned to something he couldn't quite grasp, something more than just the sense of the forest. "Easy there, partner," Bill said softly, noticing Roger's sudden pause, his body tense like a coiled spring. "What's got you so worked up?" Roger's gaze was fixed on a cluster of bushes to the right, his growl low and rumbling like distant thunder. Bill followed his line of sight and squinted into the darkness. "A rabbit or a coyote, maybe," he mused aloud, but deep down, he knew it was likely more than that. "Let's check it out," Bill whispered, a thrill coursing through him despite the unease. He stepped closer, the lantern light revealing the tangled underbrush, but there was no sign of life except for the rustling leaves. He crouched down, peering through the thicket when a glint caught his eye, a glimmer of metal nestled among the twigs and dirt. With careful fingers, he pulled aside the branches and unearthed a rusted horseshoe, its surface pitted and worn. "Well, this ain't no ordinary find," he muttered, turning it over in his hands. "A horseshoe means luck, they say, but I reckon it could also mean trouble if it belonged to the wrong kind of cowboy." Roger sniffed the horseshoe, his eyes darting back to the shadows. The growl returned, deepening, and Bill felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. "You feeling that too, huh?" he asked, glancing into the dark beyond the bushes, where the trees loomed like ancient sentinels. "Looks like we might be getting closer to something." He stood, pocketing the horseshoe, and continued along the path indicated on the map. The trees closed in around them, branches twisting like bony fingers reaching out to grasp him. The lantern flickered, casting eerie shapes that danced along the ground, and he could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching their every move. "Just keep your wits about you, Roger," Bill said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If there's something out here, we'll face it together." They pressed on, moving deeper into the valley, the map guiding them toward a clearing that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. As they neared, a strange glow began to emanate from within, illuminating the ground like the first rays of dawn breaking through the darkness. Bill hesitated, a sense of foreboding washing over him. "What in tarnation?" he breathed, the glow growing brighter. As they emerged into the clearing, Bill's breath caught in his throat. The source of the light was a small pond, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly luminescence, casting a silvery sheen across the rocks and grass. The air felt charged, alive with a tension that crackled like static. Roger approached the water cautiously, his reflection dancing on the surface, and Bill felt an instinctive pull toward the pond. "Ain't that something?" he said, his voice thick with awe. "Could be a place where secrets are kept." He knelt by the water's edge, peering into its depths. The glow seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, and he could almost swear he saw shapes moving beneath the surface, figures that danced just out of reach. "What do you reckon, Roger? Should we take a closer look?" Before he could decide, a sudden chill swept through the clearing, and the whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around him like leaves in a tempest. "Seeker, Seeker, find the truth." Bill straightened, eyes wide, as the shadows deepened, swirling toward the pond like tendrils of smoke. "This ain't just any pond," he said, voice trembling with realization. "It's a wellspring of something powerful." Roger growled again, a fierce sound that echoed through the clearing, and Bill felt the air shift, something ancient and restless awakening from its slumber. "What's happening here?" he asked, half to himself and half to the dog. He could sense the boundary between this world and the next growing thin, and the weight of history pressed down upon him like a heavy fog. "Let's not linger too long," he decided, standing abruptly. "If this place holds secrets, we'll need to be smart about how we uncover them." With the map still clutched in his pocket, he glanced back at the glowing pond, a sense of urgency bubbling within him. "Come on, Roger," he urged, waving the lantern to illuminate their path. "The night's still young, and I reckon there's more to find." As they turned to leave, the whispers swelled once more, echoing off the trees, and for a fleeting moment, Bill thought he saw a figure rise from the pond, a shadowy silhouette reaching out with a beckoning hand. But just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished beneath the shimmering surface, leaving only the stillness of the night behind. Bill and Roger ventured forth, the mysteries of the valley entwining around them like a web, a journey that promised to uncover truths long buried and a fate that awaited them in the darkened embrace of the frontier. With Roger's low growl echoing in the silence, Bill stepped away from the glowing pond, heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. The cool night air wrapped around him like a damp blanket, and he could feel the ground beneath his boots shifting as if it were alive, eager to share its secrets. "Let's move, boy," he urged, casting one last glance at the water, the glow still pulsing softly, enticing and treacherous all at once. As they made their way back toward the path leading out of the valley, Bill's thoughts raced. He recalled the legends his grandmother used to spin by the fire, tales of old cowboys who stumbled upon enchanted springs, their lives forever altered. If that pond was a wellspring of power, what kind of power lay beneath its surface? He could almost hear his grandmother's voice whispering, "Watch where you tread, son. Some secrets ain't meant to be uncovered." They walked with purpose, Roger sniffing the air, his ears perked up, as if listening for something Bill couldn't hear. The lantern flickered again, its light sputtering in protest against the encroaching darkness. "Now ain't the time for you to go dim on me," Bill murmured, shaking the lantern gently as they emerged from the thicket and onto the rocky path. Bill stopped, crouching down to inspect the ground. "What's this?" he said, brushing away the loose dirt with his fingers. Beneath the soil, a glint of metal caught his eye. He dug deeper, revealing an old belt buckle, tarnished but still bearing the emblem of a long-forgotten ranch brand. "Looks like we ain't the first to tread this way." He held the buckle up to the light, squinting at the engraving. "Could be from the McKinley Ranch. Heard tales of them folks before the land got swallowed up by time." Roger edged closer, sniffing at the buckle before looking up at Bill with intelligent eyes. "You think it's a sign?" Bill asked, his brow furrowing. "A clue to what happened out here?" The dog's soft whine seemed to answer him, and Bill couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not just by the shadows of the trees, but by something else, something ancient and aware. He stood up, tucking the buckle into his pocket, and continued down the path, determined to follow the clues that fate seemed to be laying out before him. As they ventured further, the path twisted and turned like a snake, leading them toward a steep incline. The moon hung low in the sky, its light spilling over the landscape, illuminating the rugged terrain. "Ain't this a sight?" Bill said, pausing to take it all in. The land spread out before them, wild and untamed, the vastness of the frontier stretching to the horizon. "But I reckon we ain't here for the view." They approached a dilapidated wooden signpost, half buried in the dirt. The letters were weathered, barely legible, but Bill could make out the name, Haunted Hollow. "Now that sounds like a place we ought to steer clear of," he quipped, his heart racing. Suddenly, Roger's body stiffened, his gaze locked onto something in the distance. Bill followed the dog's line of sight to a crumbling structure half hidden by overgrown brush. It looked like an old cabin, its roof sagging, the walls worn and weary. Yet the air around it hummed with a strange energy that sent shivers down Bill's spine. "You see that?" he whispered. "Looks like we found ourselves a ghost house." "Let's check it out," he said, though a part of him wanted to turn back. They had come this far, and if there were answers to be found, he wouldn't turn tail now. "Stay close, Roger," he added, his voice steadying as they approached the cabin. The door hung ajar, creaking softly as the night wind nudged it. Bill pushed it open with a cautious hand, the hinges groaning in protest. The interior was dark, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and something else, something musty that reminded him of forgotten memories. He flicked the lantern higher, illuminating the room before him. The cabin was sparsely furnished, remnants of a bygone era scattered about, a rusted stove, a table with a single crooked chair, and a dusty bed in the corner. Looks like nobody's been here in years, he muttered, stepping inside. Roger wandered ahead, sniffing at a corner where cobwebs hung like ghostly curtains. Bill followed, his eyes scanning for anything that might give him a clue. A sudden clatter made him jump, and he turned to see Roger barking at something half buried beneath the floorboards. "What is it, boy?" he asked, kneeling down to see. With careful fingers, he pried away the loose boards, revealing a small, leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and worn. Bill's heart raced as he lifted it out, brushing the dust away to reveal the initials embossed on the front. J.B. Could be the fella who owned this place, he mused, flipping the journal open to reveal pages filled with hurried scrawl. The writing was shaky, as if the author had been gripped by some great urgency. "What secrets you hold, friend?" he murmured, scanning the words. The entries spoke of strange happenings, muffled voices in the night, shadows that danced when no one was watching, and a growing fear that something was watching him from the depths of the woods. "This here is getting creepier by the minute," Bill said, glancing over his shoulder. As he turned back to the journal, a chill raced down his spine, and he felt a presence, a weight in the air that hadn't been there before. "Roger," he whispered, feeling the dog's body tense beside him. "I think we're not alone." The lantern flickered again, its light dimming as the whispers returned, a cacophony of voices swirling around him, a chorus of the lost. "Seeker, Seeker, uncover the truth." "Get ready, boy," Bill said, gripping the journal tightly. "Looks like the past ain't done with us yet." With Roger by his side, he stood at the threshold of the unknown, ready to confront the shadows that lingered in the night. Bill's heart thudded in his chest like a drum, echoing through the stillness of the cabin. The whispers swirled around him, chilling him to the bone, and he fought the urge to flee. "Let's not jump the gun now, Bill," he muttered to himself. "Ain't no ghost gonna scare a man with a dog at his side." He took a steadying breath, forcing himself to focus on the task at hand. Roger, ever alert, moved closer to Bill, his ears pricked and nostrils flaring, sensing the charged atmosphere that filled the room. The flickering lantern cast long shadows that danced across the walls, and as Bill turned his gaze back to the journal, he felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. He flipped through the pages, his fingers tracing over the scrawled words that spoke of mysteries yet to be solved. "If JB was running scared," he murmured, "then there's got to be a reason." He read further, finding a passage that caught his eye. "Found the silver mine today, but it's not just silver. There's something deeper, something that calls to me. I can't shake the feeling that it's tied to the old tales, the ones about the hollow, the spirits that guard it." "Silver mine," Bill echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now that's a curiosity worth digging into." He glanced at Roger, who had settled down, ears perked, as if he could sense the significance of the words. "What do you reckon, partner? Could be a big haul if we find it." The dog cocked his head as if in response, and Bill chuckled lightly. "I hear ya. But first, let's see what else this old cabin's hiding." He set the journal aside and stood, scanning the dimly lit room for any hidden compartments or secret passages. He moved to the rusty stove, checking behind it for loose boards or hidden nooks. Nothing but cobwebs and dust. Bill turned his attention to the crooked chair, giving it a gentle nudge with his boot. The chair tipped slightly, revealing a section of the floor that looked unusually fresh compared to the rest of the cabin's decay. "Could be something down there," he thought aloud, kneeling down again. "Let's give it a go, Roger." He reached for the edge of the floorboard, prying it up with his knife. The wood splintered, revealing a shallow cavity underneath. Bill peered inside and saw something glimmering in the lantern light. "Well, I'll be," he breathed, pulling out a small wooden box, ornately carved but worn by time. "What do we got here?" Roger leaned in, sniffing the box with keen interest. Bill carefully opened the lid, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside lay a collection of silver coins, their surfaces glinting like stars against the dark velvet lining. "Looks like JB. Wasn't just chasing shadows after all," Bill said, a grin spreading across his face. "Now we're talking." But as he lifted a coin to the lantern's light, a chill swept through the room, a whisper brushing against his ear. "Guardians, you must heed the call." Bill felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. "All right, I reckon it's time to listen," he said, stuffing the coins into his pocket. "But we're not done yet." He stood up, glancing around the cabin for any more clues. "If JB found the silver mine, there's a good chance he marked its location somehow. Let's get back to that journal." Roger sniffed around the floor, ever attentive, before returning to Bill's side. The dog's gaze flickered toward a corner of the room where a faded map hung crookedly on the wall. "What's that, Roger?" Bill asked, moving closer. The map appeared to be a rough sketch of the surrounding land, dotted with names and markings. Bill's heart raced as he spotted an X near a prominent peak in the distance. "That's gotta be it," he said, excitement bubbling up within him. "JB's silver mine, right there." He took the map off the wall, careful not to tear it, and examined the landmarks. "If this is true, we might be sitting on a gold mine, silver mine." He chuckled at his own jest, but the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on his shoulders. "We just gotta find a way to get there without stirring up whatever's haunting this place." As Bill traced the map with his finger, Roger suddenly stood alert, his body tense as if he sensed something beyond the walls of the cabin. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, but the dog merely stared toward the door, muscles coiled and ready. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the cabin like a windstorm, a symphony of voices calling out to him. "Seeker, seeker, uncover the truth before it's too late." "All right, we're on borrowed time, I reckon," Bill said, shoving the map into his pocket. "Let's move before whatever's out there decides to pay us a visit." He grabbed the journal, its pages crinkling in his grip, and headed for the door, Roger close behind him. The night air hit them like a cold slap, and as they stepped outside, the moon hung high above, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. The trees loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to warn them. Bill took a deep breath, the smell of pine and damp earth mingling with the lingering sense of the cabin. "We're gonna find that mine, Roger, and we'll do it together." As they set off down the winding path, the whispers faded into the night, leaving only the sound of their footsteps and the rustle of leaves. But Bill knew this was just the beginning. The spirits of the past were restless, and he could feel their presence lingering, guiding him toward a destiny woven with secrets and shadows. With the journal in hand and the promise of adventure ahead, Bill couldn't shake the feeling that the real mystery was only just beginning to unfold. The path wound through the thick underbrush, the moon casting ghostly beams onto the rugged terrain. Bill moved with purpose, his heart racing as he held the journal close. Each step felt weighted with history, as though the very ground beneath him was a palimpsest of forgotten stories. Roger trotted beside him, ears perked, ever watchful. The dog's instincts were sharper than a rattlesnake's fangs, and Bill trusted him to sense any lurking dangers. "Stick close, partner," Bill murmured, glancing down at the dog. "This here trail ain't just a stroll in the park." Roger responded with a soft huff, his gaze flickering between the trees, alert to any stirrings in the darkness. As they pressed on, the whispering voices from the cabin danced on the edge of Bill's consciousness, weaving through his thoughts like smoke. "Guardians, heed the call." The words echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, not just by the spirits of the cabin, but by something more corporeal, more immediate. They reached a clearing where the trees thinned out, revealing a rocky outcrop that jutted toward the sky like an ancient sentinel. Bill paused, taking a moment to catch his breath and study the map once more. The X marked a spot not far from where they stood, and the sight of it sent a thrill coursing through him. "That peak there," he pointed, "I reckon that's where we'll find our silver." Roger's ears perked up, and he began to sniff the air, his nose twitching as he caught a whiff of something unfamiliar. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, sensing the shift in the air. Roger moved ahead cautiously, his paws padding softly against the earth, and Bill followed closely behind, heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As they approached the rocky formation, Bill's mind wandered to the legends he had heard about this land. Stories of lost miners, treasures buried deep, and the ghosts who roamed the hills, protecting their secrets from greedy hands. "You think JB might have run afoul of one of them spirits?" he pondered aloud. Might explain why he never made it back to town. Roger paused, turning his head sharply as a rustle echoed from a nearby thicket. Bill held his breath, his senses tingling with the anticipation of what might emerge. "Show yourself," he called, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. The rustle grew louder, and out stepped a rabbit, twitching its nose as it regarded them curiously before darting off into the brush. Bill let out a slow breath, chuckling softly. "Just a critter. Nothing to worry about, but let's keep our wits about us." He gestured for Roger to stay close, and they continued their trek toward the looming peak. As they climbed higher, the terrain grew more treacherous, jagged rocks jutting out like the teeth of a great beast. Bill navigated carefully, feeling the rough edges of the stone beneath his hands as he steadied himself. "Ain't no picnic, but I reckon it'll be worth it when we find that silver," he said, glancing down at Roger, who was nimbly maneuvering the obstacles with the grace of a mountain goat. At last, they reached a ledge that offered a sweeping view of the valley below. The moon hung low, illuminating the landscape in a silvery glow, and for a moment Bill felt an overwhelming sense of peace. But it was short-lived, as the whispers began anew, echoing off the rocks. "Uncover the truth before it's too late." "Damn it!" Bill muttered, shaking his head. "This is getting real old." He turned his attention back to the map, searching for any sign of where the mine might be. "If JB buried it good, we'll need to search every inch of this place." Roger sniffed the air again, more insistent this time. His tail wagged with a mixture of excitement and urgency. "What's got you all riled up, boy?" Bill asked, kneeling to get a better look at the ground. It was scattered with loose stones, but something caught his eye, a glint of silver peeking out from beneath a rock. Bill reached down, pulling away the stones with his hands. What he uncovered made his heart skip a beat, a silver locket, intricately designed, with a small clasp that was almost hidden beneath the dirt. "Well, I'll be," he whispered, holding it up to the moonlight. The locket was heavy in his palm, and he could feel the history it carried. Roger nudged him, growling softly, as if urging him to open it. With cautious fingers, Bill unlatched the clasp, and the locket sprang open to reveal a tiny portrait. Faded but unmistakably a woman, her gaze somber and ethereal, as if she were peering right into his soul. The sight sent a shiver down Bill's spine. "Who are you, darling?" he murmured, entranced by the image. He could almost feel the weight of her story pressing down upon him, a reminder that JB had not been the only one tied to this land, nor the only one who had suffered. The whispers intensified, surrounding him like a tempest. "Seek her. Seek her. Bring peace." Bill's heart raced as he felt a pull in his chest, a need to understand the connection between the woman and the mine. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and sage, tinged with something almost electric. "Looks like we're not just hunting silver after all," he said, determination setting in. He tucked the locket into his pocket, feeling its weight like a promise. "We're going to find her story, Roger, and we'll bring her some peace." With renewed purpose, they descended from the ledge, the path stretching ahead like an uncharted frontier. Bill felt the weight of the night pressing against him, but he also felt the thrill of adventure coursing through his veins. The mystery deepened, and he knew without a doubt that they were on the cusp of uncovering something far greater than mere silver. The spirits were restless, and he was ready to heed their call. The moon hung high above the rugged terrain, casting elongated shadows that danced with the flickering light of the stars. Bill felt the night air chill his bones, but the thrill of discovery kept him warm. He and Roger pressed on, the rugged trail ahead twisting like a serpent through the hills. Bill could feel the weight of the locket in his pocket, a silent promise urging him forward. "Come on, boy," he said, glancing at Roger, who was still alert, ears perked and nose twitching. "We got to find out what this lady's story is, and if there's silver to be found along the way, well, that's just a bonus." The dog responded with a low growl, his gaze fixed on a darkened hollow nestled between two towering pines. "Easy there, Roger," Bill reassured him, but his voice was laced with uncertainty. The whispers that had enveloped him earlier echoed faintly in the air, and he could almost hear them beckoning him toward the hollow. Curiosity and a sense of duty propelled him forward. They approached the shadowy opening and Bill crouched low, peering inside. The hollow seemed to stretch deep, a yawning mouth of earth. "Looks like something used to live in there," he murmured, brushing his fingers against the cool stone. "Could be a den or maybe an old mine entrance. Let's see what we can dig up." Roger, with his keen instincts, nosed at the ground, digging at the entrance with earnest determination. "Now hold your horses," Bill said with a chuckle, not wanting the pup to get too far ahead. "I'll do the digging around here." He pulled out his trusty knife, a relic of his father's, its blade worn but sharp. He began to clear the loose dirt and debris with methodical strokes, revealing a more defined opening. As he worked, the scent of damp earth filled the air, mingling with the sharpness of pine. "This place feels alive, don't it?" he remarked, glancing at Roger, who had settled back, watching intently. "Like it's waiting for someone to wake it up." Just as he was about to dig deeper, a faint glimmer caught his eye among the stones and roots. He leaned closer, brushing away the dirt to reveal a small, rusted lantern. The glass was cracked, but Bill felt a thrill run through him. "What have we here?" He lifted it from the earth, inspecting it closely. "This ain't just any lantern, it's old. Might have belonged to JB or his kin." Roger sniffed at it, tail wagging slowly, as if he sensed the weight of its history. Bill opened the lantern, hoping to find remnants of oil or perhaps a note tucked inside, but it was empty. Disappointed yet undeterred, he turned it over in his hands, feeling its cool metal against his palm. "Maybe there's a story worth telling tied to this here lantern," he said, contemplating its presence. He continued to search the hollow, taking care to not disturb anything that might hold further secrets. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him, urging him to dig deeper. "You want me to uncover the truth, huh?" he muttered, his heart quickening as he recalled the woman in the locket. "I reckon we'll find out what happened to you, ma'am. Just keeping my ear to the ground." Roger, ever the vigilant companion, began to bark, his stance rigid as he stared into the darkness of the hollow. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, tensing as he scanned the shadows. Roger barked again, low and throaty, as if something sinister lurked just beyond their sight. "Could be just a rabbit or a coyote," Bill said, trying to convince himself. "But I'll be damned if I ain't on my toes." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled ever so slightly, sending a shiver up Bill's spine. He steadied himself against the wall of the hollow, eyes wide. "Roger, you feeling that?" The dog whined softly, pacing back and forth, clearly sensing something. The air thickened, a heaviness that pressed against his chest. "Let's move back a bit," Bill suggested, inching away from the entrance. "Don't want to be caught in any landslide." Just then, a flash of light erupted from the depths of the hollow. Bill squinted, heart racing. "What in tarnation?" The light flickered again, brighter this time, illuminating the hollow with an otherworldly glow. It pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat, and Bill felt a strange pull towards it. With each flicker, the whispers crescendoed, now a chorus of voices that seemed to chant a name Bill couldn't quite catch. "Come on, Roger. We need to see what that is," he urged, stepping closer despite the instinct to run. The dog hesitated, looking back at his master, but Bill placed a reassuring hand on his back. "It's just a glow. Nothing we can't handle. Let's go." "Oh." As they stepped closer to the entrance, the light grew steadier, revealing a small alcove just beyond the hollow. It seemed to shimmer with energy, and Bill couldn't help but feel that they were on the brink of uncovering something monumental. Something that could bind the living and the dead, and perhaps shed light on the mysteries of this forsaken place. With a deep breath, Bill entered the alcove, his pulse quickening as he crossed the threshold into the unknown. The light enveloped them, and he could hear the whispering voices clearer than ever, calling out to him, urging him to seek the truth that lay hidden in the shadows of the past. "We're coming, darling," he promised, heart pounding as he stepped into the luminous unknown. The light enveloped Bill and Roger, casting long shadows that danced along the rough-hewn walls of the alcove. The air was thick with a tingling energy, making the hair on Bill's arms stand on end. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him, the whispers growing clearer, pressing against his mind like a gentle tide. "Hold tight, Roger," Bill whispered, his voice barely above a breath. The dog, ever loyal, stayed close, his ears perked and nostrils flaring as if trying to catch a scent that was just out of reach. "We're in uncharted territory, boy." As they stepped further into the alcove, the flickering light revealed more than just the strange glow. Old wooden beams, aged and splintered, crisscrossed overhead, their once vibrant color now dulled by time and neglect. The floor was a patchwork of dirt and stones, but what caught Bill's eye was the small pile of broken items strewn about. A cracked pottery shard here, a rusted horseshoe there, remnants of a life long gone. "Looks like this place has seen better days," he muttered, crouching to examine the pottery. He turned it over in his hand, trying to decipher its markings. Could be a clue to who lived here. Maybe JB himself had a fondness for the finer things. Roger, ever perceptive, began to sniff the air again, his body rigid. Bill followed the dog's gaze to a corner of the alcove where the glow seemed to intensify, illuminating a shallow recess in the wall. Intrigued, Bill approached cautiously, his heart thumping like a drum in his chest. "What do you reckon, boy? Should we take a gander?" he asked, squinting at the unusual formation. The recess was small, barely wide enough for a hand, but something about it felt significant. Bill reached out, brushing away a layer of dust that had settled over the recess. Just as he did, the air shifted, an almost palpable change that sent a chill racing up his spine. He hesitated, hand hovering above the opening, and the whispers crescendoed, a rush of voices intertwining. The lantern, still clutched in his other hand, felt suddenly warm, as if it had absorbed the energy of the alcove. Bill held it up, the flickering glow casting long shadows that danced along the walls. "I reckon you're trying to tell me something," he murmured to the lantern, turning it this way and that. Roger, sensing his master's tension, barked softly, urging Bill to proceed. With a deep breath, Bill slid his hand into the recess, fingers brushing against something solid. It felt cool to the touch, smooth and round. He pulled it out carefully, revealing an ornate locket, similar in design to the one he had found earlier. "Well, I'll be," he exclaimed, his voice filled with awe. The locket was tarnished, but still held a beauty that hinted at its former splendor. A matching pair, perhaps? He flipped it open, revealing a small portrait of a woman with striking features, her eyes a piercing blue, as if they could see right through him. "Must have meant a lot to someone," he said, studying her face. "What's your story, darling?" The whispers swirled around him again, this time clearer, calling out a name that danced just beyond his grasp. "What's your name?" he asked, looking back at Roger, who was now sniffing at the ground near the recess. The dog pawed at the dirt, whimpering softly, clearly sensing something amiss. "Easy there, boy," Bill said, kneeling beside Roger. He brushed the dirt aside with his fingers, revealing more of the recess, and his pulse quickened as he noticed a small glint of metal peeking through the earth. With renewed vigor, he began to dig gently, the locket resting in his pocket. "What do you think we're going to find, Roger? Another trinket or something more?" Just as the last clump of dirt was cleared away, Bill's fingers closed around what felt like a small, heavy box. He pulled it free from its earthen prison, a rusted lock on one side, and intricate carvings adorning the surface. "Now we're talking," he breathed, excitement bubbling within him. "Whatever's in here could be worth a fortune," he mused, examining the box. "Or it could just lead us deeper into this mystery." He glanced at Roger, who was watching him with keen eyes, as if encouraging him to continue. "Let's see if we can open this thing up." Bill fished a small screwdriver from his pocket, a tool he never left home without, and began to pry at the rusted lock. Each twist and turn felt like a heartbeat, the tension in the air thickening as the whispers crescendoed into a chorus of hope and despair. With one final twist, the lock gave way, and the lid creaked open, revealing a collection of aged papers, yellowed with time. Bill pulled one out, unfolding it carefully, his heart racing as he scanned the delicate handwriting. "Looks like a journal," he murmured, the weight of history palpable in his hands. Maybe it'll tell us who this woman was and what happened to her. As he read, the room seemed to close in around him, the whispers fading to a hush, as if the very spirits of the place held their breath, waiting for the next chapter of their story to be uncovered. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a nagging feeling grew that he was not just a visitor in this ghostly home, but a part of its legacy, a legacy that was waiting to be revealed, and perhaps a fortune that was buried deep in the past. The old house creaked, as if responding to Bill's unearthing of its secrets. He could almost feel the walls leaning in closer, curious about the man who dared to pry into their hidden past. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that twisted and turned like ghosts among the dust motes floating in the air. The light from the lantern flickered uncertainly, and Bill knew he couldn't linger too long in this haunted space. "All right, let's see what you've got for me," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned his attention back to the journal, its pages fragile and worn, each letter steeped in the weight of history. As he read, the name on the page caught his eye, Cecilia. He repeated it softly, letting the syllables roll off his tongue like a forgotten melody. Cecilia, he said, feeling an odd connection with the name. It seemed to resonate within the very bones of the house. The journal detailed a life filled with dreams and heartaches, the ink trailing off into passages of despair and longing. "Seems like you had a rough go of it, darling," he remarked to the silent room. Roger nudged Bill's leg, his keen nose twitching as he picked up on the tension in the air. The dog's ears perked and alert. With each page turned, Bill pieced together bits of Cecilia's life, her love for a cowboy named James, their plans to start a family, and the untimely arrival of misfortune. There were scribbled notes about a hidden treasure, a fortune meant to secure their future, but the details were as hazy as the shadows dancing around him. Treasure, huh? Bill's brow furrowed. Now that's a curious turn of events. He felt the weight of the journal in his hands, a promise of adventure and danger. "What did you find, Cecilia?" He turned to Roger, who was sniffing at a spot near the wall where old nails had long since rusted away. "You think there's more to this place than just a dusty old house?" Roger let out a low growl, his instincts sharp as he kept his eyes locked on the wall. Bill stood up, brushing the dust from his knees. "Let's check it out," he said, moving cautiously towards where Roger had fixated his attention. The wall felt cool against his hand as he pressed his palm against the wood, feeling for any irregularities. The whispers began again, a soft susurration that seemed to flow through the very fibers of the house. Bill's heart raced as he searched for a way to reveal what lay hidden behind the wall. "Maybe there's a secret compartment or something," he mused aloud, glancing back at the journal. Cecilia mentioned a key, but didn't say what it was. He started tapping the wall lightly, listening for hollow sounds. Roger barked sharply, his tail wagging, as if urging Bill to keep going. Encouraged by his companion's enthusiasm, Bill concentrated, his knuckles rapping against the wood until he struck a spot that sounded different, a dull thud. "Now we're on to something, boy," Bill said, excitement surging through him. He took a step back and put his shoulder into the wall, pressing hard against the spot. The wood groaned in protest, but then, with a final shove, a panel swung inward, revealing a dark void behind. "Look at that," Bill exclaimed, peering into the darkness. The lantern's light flickered uncertainly, casting eerie shadows. "What do you reckon is back there?" Roger's nose twitched as he edged closer, and with a swift move, Bill fetched the lantern and held it high, illuminating a cramped space that smelled of mildew and forgotten memories. Inside, he could see crates piled haphazardly, covered in a thick layer of dust, their labels barely legible. A chill ran down his spine as he recognized an emblem, a brand marking he had seen before on old maps of treasure hunts. "Cecilia's treasure," he whispered, heart thumping with anticipation. He crouched down, the beam of the lantern revealing a corner of the crate that had been pried open. With cautious hands, he lifted the lid, revealing an assortment of items, old coins, jewelry, and something else glimmering at the bottom. "Holy Moses!" he breathed, carefully lifting a rusted metal box from within. It was engraved with intricate designs, its surface marred by age, but still gleaming with an inner light that beckoned him closer. He set it down on the floor, his fingers itching to pry it open. "Let's see what's inside," he said, glancing at Roger, who sat by his side, eyes bright and eager. The air was thick with the scent of history, and Bill felt as if he were standing on the precipice of a great revelation. He took a breath, steadying himself against the thrill of discovery. The box's latch clicked open with a surprising ease, and as he lifted the lid, a rush of cold air enveloped him, a whisper of forgotten dreams swirling around his ears. Inside lay a collection of letters, bound together with a faded ribbon, each one containing secrets that could change everything Bill thought he knew about this forsaken place. "Now we're cooking," he said with a grin, excitement bubbling over as he realized he might have stumbled into the heart of a mystery that transcended time, a tale of love, loss, and the relentless pursuit of what had been lost. With Roger at his side, alert and watchful, Bill began to sift through the letters, each word igniting a new spark of intrigue. The shadows deepened around them, yet the lantern's glow felt like a beacon, illuminating a path through the darkness, a journey into the past that was far from over. The whispers in the walls beckoned him further, urging him to uncover the truth, whatever it may be. As Bill carefully unfolded the first letter, the musty scent of paper mingled with the dust motes that danced in the lantern's glow. Each word he read was steeped in emotion, and he could almost hear the voices of those long gone calling out from the pages. He leaned closer, squinting at the faded ink. "Dearest Eliza," he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile spell woven by the past. "The world feels heavier without you, and each day I search for a way to bring you back to me." Roger's ears perked up at the sound of his master's voice, the old dog shifting restlessly, his nose twitching as if catching a scent only he could perceive. Bill paused, glancing at Roger, who was fixated on a shadow lurking just beyond the reach of the lantern light. "Easy there, old boy," Bill said, trying to steady his own racing heart. "You're not gonna find a ghost hiding in the shadows." He chuckled nervously, though the unease clawed at his insides. "Or maybe you will." He returned his attention to the letter, tracing the elegant looping script with his finger. The writer, clearly a man of passion, had poured his heart into these pages. Bill's curiosity piqued, and he couldn't help but wonder who this Eliza was and what fate had befallen her. With each letter he unfurled, it became increasingly clear that the mystery was deeper than he'd imagined, entwined with the very essence of the house. "Here's another," he said, flipping to the next letter, the parchment crackling under his touch. "Seems like this fella was in quite a pickle." The inked words spoke of hidden fortunes, of buried treasures stowed away for a time when love might bloom anew. Bill's heart raced. If there was treasure involved, it could very well lead to the answers he sought about the house's history, and perhaps a way to mend his own broken spirit. "Roger," he murmured, gesturing for the dog to come closer. "What do you think? Are we on the right track?" The dog whined softly, tail wagging, as he sniffed at the pile of letters, his instincts sharp as ever. Bill smiled at the creature's unwavering loyalty and uncanny ability to sense the unseen. "You always know when something's up, don't you?" As Bill delved into the letters, each one seemed to build upon the last, revealing a saga of heartbreak and hope. They spoke of clandestine meetings beneath the moonlight, a promise to uncover a secret hidden within the very walls they now occupied. A chill crept up Bill's spine as he read about a map that could lead to a fabled treasure buried near the old oak tree in the valley below. "Could that be where the key is?" he pondered aloud, his voice echoing in the stillness of the room. Cecilia mentioned a key, and if this old boy hid a treasure, it stands to reason he might have left some clues behind. Roger nudged Bill's knee with his snout, as if to say, "Let's go find it." "All right then, let's not dawdle," Bill said, excitement bubbling within him. "But we better be careful. This place might hold more than just dusty letters." He took the lantern, casting its light over the crates, searching for anything that might point him toward the hidden treasure. The shadows seemed to watch him, shifting and curling as he moved, and the whispers grew louder, an almost tangible energy buzzing in the air. As Bill rifled through the crates, he came across a small, weathered box hidden beneath a pile of old blankets. It was locked tight, the metal rusted but sturdy. "Now, what have we here?" he muttered, inspecting it closely. Roger sniffed at the box, his growl low and rumbling, as if warning Bill to tread carefully. Bill could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, an awareness that he might be unearthing more than just artifacts of the past. "Let's see if we can't coax this old thing open," he said, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. Pulling a small, pointed tool from his pocket, he knelt down, working the lock with careful precision. It took a few tense moments, but the lock finally clicked, and with a gentle tug, the lid swung open. Inside lay a tattered map, its edges frayed and brittle. The ink was faded but still legible, marking a route that wound through the valley and back toward the old oak tree. A series of cryptic symbols adorned the parchment, alongside what looked like a compass rose. "By thunder, this might just be the key to our treasure," Bill whispered, a grin splitting his face. He could feel the thrill of adventure coursing through him, but the thrill was tempered by a sense of foreboding. There was something almost alive about the air in the room, as though the very walls held their breath. Roger barked again, more insistent this time, and Bill looked up, meeting the dog's keen eyes. "What is it, boy? You sense something?" With a low growl, Roger darted toward the back of the cramped space, sniffing intently at the wall. Bill rose to follow, the lantern casting long shadows as he approached the spot where Roger was focused. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of lost voices swirling in the air, and the chill deepened, wrapping around him like a winter's night. "What in tarnation?" Bill muttered, reaching out to touch the wall where Roger had indicated. It felt colder here, the wood almost alive beneath his fingertips. As he pressed harder, a section of the wall shifted slightly, revealing a hidden panel that had remained undetected until now. "Looks like we've struck gold again," he said, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. With a firm push, the panel swung open, revealing yet another space, darker and deeper than the first. Roger's growl intensified, and Bill felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Stay close, buddy," he said, stepping into the darkness, the lantern's light flickering as if struggling against the shadows. Whatever lay beyond this threshold was bound to be more than just forgotten trinkets. It was a promise of secrets yet untold, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover them. With his heart racing and Roger at his side, Bill took a deep breath, ready to step into the unknown. The house seemed to pulse around him, a living entity filled with echoes of the past, and Bill couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The adventure was just beginning, and with each step he knew they were weaving their own story into the tapestry of this haunted place. As Bill stepped into the hidden space, the air felt thicker, almost as if the darkness itself was alive, swirling with secrets begging to be unearthed. Roger trotted beside him, his keen nose to the ground, alert for any sign of danger or clue that might lead them further into this web of mystery. The lantern flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced across the rough-hewn walls, revealing glimpses of more forgotten relics, old tools, rusted horseshoes, and what appeared to be a long-abandoned saddle draped over a dusty crate. "Now, ain't that something?" Bill said, pointing toward the saddle. "Looks like someone's been sitting on the fence about leaving this place." He approached it, brushing off the dust with the back of his hand. The leather was cracked and worn, but the craftsmanship still spoke of a time when it was prized and well cared for. He imagined the tales it could tell, of the riders who had galloped through the valley, perhaps in search of fortune or love, only to find their paths intertwined with fate. Roger's ears perked up, and he moved toward a shadowy corner of the room. Bill felt a tug of unease as he followed the dog's lead, instinctively tightening his grip on the lantern. The shadows shifted like they had a mind of their own, and Bill couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from the darkness. "What do you see, boy?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Roger sniffed the air again, his growl transforming into a low whine, an unmistakable sign that he had found something of interest, or perhaps something to be wary of. Bill knelt beside him, studying the area where Roger's nose was pressed against the floorboards. There, just beneath the surface, a loose plank caught his eye, slightly askew as if it had been disturbed recently. "Let's see what's under here," Bill said, his curiosity piqued. He pried the plank up with a crowbar he had found earlier, the sound echoing through the silent space like a gunshot. Dust motes danced in the lantern light, swirling in a way that felt almost ethereal. He set the plank aside, revealing a small hollow filled with dirt and fragments of something shiny. "Gold dust," he muttered, his heart racing at the thought. He reached into the hollow, his fingers brushing against what felt like cold metal. Pulling it out, he held a small locket, intricately designed, its surface engraved with swirling patterns. The latch was still intact, and Bill's breath caught in his throat as he opened it. Inside, a faded photograph stared back at him, a young woman with bright eyes and a smile that could light up a room. "Who are you, darling?" Bill whispered, feeling an inexplicable connection to the face in the locket. He turned it over, searching for any markings or initials that might reveal her identity. Just as he was about to give up, he spotted a tiny engraving along the edge. C.E. Hartman. The name rang a bell, but he couldn't quite place it. Roger's bark startled him, pulling him back from his thoughts. The dog stood rigid, staring at the far wall, where a faint glimmer of light seeped through a crack. "What is it, Roger?" Bill asked, his pulse quickening. The dog's instincts had led them to this treasure, and now it seemed they might be on the verge of uncovering something even more significant. Bill approached the wall, brushing his fingers along the crack, feeling an almost magnetic pull. "Seems like we're onto something," he said, half to himself and half to Roger. "Let's see if we can pry this open." He used the crowbar again, this time against the edge of the crack. With a sharp tug, the wall shifted slightly, revealing a hidden compartment behind it, filled with dusty old books and papers. He set the lantern down, illuminating the newly exposed space. One book in particular caught his eye. It was bound in leather, the cover embossed with the same swirling patterns as the locket. Carefully, Bill retrieved it, brushing off the dust. "The Journal of Caleb Hartman," he read aloud, feeling the weight of history in his hands. Flipping it open, he discovered pages filled with cramped handwriting, chronicling the life of a man who had struggled against the very elements that surrounded him. Caleb wrote about love, loss, and a relentless pursuit of something greater, a hidden treasure perhaps, that could change the course of his family's legacy. "What you got there, Bill?" Roger seemed to ask, his eyes fixed on the book as if urging him to read on. With every turn of the page, the tension mounted. Caleb spoke of dreams that had haunted him, visions of the valley beneath the old oak, and a warning of spirits that guarded the treasure. He was looking for something more than gold, wasn't he? Bill mused, the weight of the words heavy in the air. He was searching for redemption. The deeper he read, the more he felt the pull of the past intertwining with the present. There was something powerful in these words, a connection that whispered of unfinished business. Bill glanced at Roger, who seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. "We might be in over our heads, old friend," he said, the thrill of adventure mingling with a sense of caution. With renewed determination, Bill closed the journal and tucked it under his arm. "Let's head out, Roger. We got a treasure to find, and some spirits to reckon with." The lantern flickered one last time as they stepped back into the shadows of the house, the whispers of the past echoing around them, urging them forward into the unknown. The night air was thick with the scent of cedar and damp earth as Bill stepped outside, the old house creaking behind him like a weary ghost. The moon hung low, casting silver beams across the landscape, illuminating the rugged terrain that stretched out before him. Roger trotted beside him, his nose to the ground, occasionally glancing up as if to gauge the danger that lurked in the shadows. "Let's see what you got for us, Caleb Hartman," Bill muttered, rubbing the leather cover of the journal. It felt warm against his palm, almost alive with the energy of its previous owner. He made his way toward the gnarled old oak tree that Caleb had written about, its twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, pointing to some long-forgotten secret buried beneath its roots. As they approached, Bill noticed the ground was uneven, with patches of grass struggling to grow in the shade of the ancient tree. The air grew still, and even the crickets seemed to hush their song as if the world held its breath. "This must be the place," Bill said, glancing at Roger, who stood alert, ears perked and eyes scanning the darkness. "All right, let's see if we can turn over some stones," he said, kneeling by the base of the tree. He dug his fingers into the soil, the cool earth giving way to roots and stones. Roger circled around, sniffing intently, a low growl rumbling from his throat. Bill paused, looking at the dog. "What's got you spooked, boy?" Roger's gaze was fixed on a specific spot, and Bill followed his line of sight, noticing a strange discoloration in the dirt, as if something had recently been disturbed. "Well, if that ain't a sign, I don't know what is." He set to work, his hands moving swiftly, pulling away the loose soil. The digging revealed a wooden box, worn and weathered, its edges frayed with age. Bill's heart raced as he unearthed it. Looks like Caleb wasn't just a dreamer after all. He pried it open with the crowbar, the hinges creaking like the old house behind him. Inside lay a collection of dusty items, a tarnished compass, a silver pocket watch that had long stopped ticking, and an old map, its edges frayed and yellowed. "Now, ain't you a sight for sore eyes?" he said to the map, carefully unfurling it. The lines were faded but still discernible, revealing a layout of the valley, marked with notes and symbols that made Bill's pulse quicken. "Looks like Caleb had a plan, and it might just lead us to whatever treasure he was after." Roger whined softly, nudging Bill's arm as if urging him to keep moving. "You're right, partner. We can't waste time." He tucked the compass and watch into his pocket, holding the map in front of him. A sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves above, and the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. "Let's see where this leads us." He turned, casting a final glance at the old oak, feeling an unshakable sense that the spirits of the past were watching, guiding him. With the lantern swinging at his side, Bill and Roger set off toward the valley, the map's directions etched in his mind. The moonlight illuminated their path, revealing the undulating hills that rolled like waves across the landscape. As they walked, the distant howl of the wind carried a whisper, a voice that seemed to call out to them, teasing them with secrets yet to be revealed. Bill felt the weight of the journal in his pocket, the words of Caleb Hartman echoing in his mind, urging him onward. "Now I reckon we're onto something big," he said, glancing down at Roger, who trotted beside him, tail wagging as if he understood the gravity of their quest. "You ever think we'd be digging up the past like this, old fella?" Roger's ears perked up at a distant sound, a rustling in the underbrush, and he stopped, his posture tense. Bill followed the dog's gaze, squinting into the shadows. "What is it, boy? You see something?" Before he could finish his question, a figure emerged from the gloom, a woman, dressed in a flowing white gown that shimmered in the moonlight. Her hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall of stars, and her eyes held an otherworldly glow. Bill's heart raced as he stumbled back, nearly tripping over his own boots. "Who are you?" he called out, steadying himself. The woman's lips curled into a gentle smile, but there was a sadness in her gaze, as if she carried the weight of untold stories. "I am Clara," she said, her voice a soft melody that floated through the air. "I've been waiting for someone like you, Bill. Someone to help me finish what was started long ago." "Finish what?" he stammered, glancing at Roger, who remained on alert, but strangely calm in the presence of the ethereal figure. Clara stepped closer, her feet barely touching the ground. "There is a treasure hidden in this valley, one that holds the key to our redemption. But it is guarded by the spirits of those who came before. They will not let it be found without a price." Bill's mind raced, the implications swirling around him like a summer storm. "What price?" he asked, his voice steady despite the unease creeping into his gut. "The heart of one who truly seeks," she replied, her gaze piercing through him. You must face the shadows of your past and uncover the truth that binds us all. Only then can the treasure be revealed. Bill felt a chill run down his spine, the weight of her words settling in the pit of his stomach. What if I can't do it? What if the shadows are too much? Clara's expression softened. You are not alone. Your faithful companion will guide you, and I will be here to help. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. With that, she began to fade into the night, her figure dissolving like mist in the morning sun. Bill stood frozen, the echoes of her voice lingering in the air. He looked down at Roger, who remained steadfast by his side, the bond between them deepening with the weight of the task ahead. We got a ghost to reckon with, old friend, Bill said, determination flooding through him, and I reckon it's time we find that treasure. With the map in hand and the spirit of Clara guiding him, he set off into the unknown, the valley stretching wide before him, a canvas of mystery waiting to be unveiled. The night air was thick with tension, and the valley stretched before Bill like a dark sea of uncertainty. He glanced down at the map, the symbols now seeming less like riddles and more like a guide to uncovering the truth. All right, Roger, he said, determination hardening his resolve. Let's find out what all this fuss is about. They pressed deeper into the valley, the moon casting a silvery light that danced off the leaves and shadows. The sound of their footsteps crunched softly against the ground, and Bill felt the weight of Clara's words hanging heavy in the air. He needed to face the shadows, and he couldn't do it without Roger's keen instincts. As they walked, the dog suddenly stopped, ears perked and nose twitching as he picked up on a scent. Bill paused beside him, his heart racing. What is it, boy? The dog took a few cautious steps forward, guiding Bill toward a thicket of shrubs and underbrush. With a gentle nudge from Roger, he parted the branches and stumbled upon a hidden clearing. At the center stood an old, dilapidated cabin, its windows dark and foreboding. The structure seemed to sag under the weight of time, but Bill felt an inexplicable pull toward it. Could this be where Clara was leading us? He wondered aloud. Roger sniffed the air, and with a wag of his tail, he encouraged Bill to approach. As they neared the cabin, the door creaked open as if inviting them in. Bill hesitated, feeling the chill of the unknown seep into his bones, but he remembered Clara's words about facing fear. Let's see what's inside, he murmured, pushing the door wider. Inside, dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the moonlight streaming through the cracks. Old furniture lay haphazardly strewn about, and in the far corner, a trunk sat covered in layers of dust. Bill felt a surge of intuition. This might be it. He gestured for Roger to stay close as he approached the trunk. With a firm tug, he pulled it open, revealing a trove of old papers, tarnished jewelry, and a leather-bound book. Looks like Caleb was more than just a ghost story, Bill muttered, rifling through the contents. His heart raced as he uncovered documents detailing a gold mine hidden deeper in the valley, one that had been lost to time and greed. Roger sniffed at the papers, letting out a soft whine, as if urging Bill to piece together what he was discovering. Bill continued to read, and as he did, it all started to click into place. This ain't just treasure, it's a legacy. But why was Clara tied to it? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from outside, and Bill's instincts kicked in. He quickly closed the trunk and whispered to Roger, "Stay low." They huddled near the door, listening as voices approached. "Can you believe it? That fool Bill is probably out there chasing shadows," a voice sneered, followed by a harsh laugh. Bill recognized it as the voice of Jed McCullough, a local rancher known for his shifty dealings. "Let him dig around in that old ghost house. By the time he figures it out, we'll have what we need." Bill's blood ran cold as he realized the truth. McCullough and his gang had been deceiving the townsfolk with tales of Caleb's ghost to keep them from searching for the mine. "So they're the ones behind all this," Bill muttered, a fire igniting within him. "They've been using fear to scare folks away while they lay claim to the treasure." Roger's ears perked up, sensing Bill's resolve. "We need to expose this, old friend," Bill whispered. He waited until the men were distracted before slipping out the back door, his heart racing. With Roger at his side, they made their way back toward town. Bill knew he had to rally the townsfolk to show them the truth behind McCullough's trickery. As they arrived at the saloon, Bill gathered the crowd, recounting the tale of the hidden mine and the deception that had been spun around Caleb's ghost. The townsfolk listened, their expressions shifting from disbelief to dawning realization. "You mean to say we've been scared off our own land for nothing?" one of the farmers shouted, his fists clenching in anger. "Yes," Bill replied, passion in his voice. "We've got the proof right here." He held up the documents from the trunk, and the crowd erupted into a chorus of murmurs. With the townsfolk united, they marched toward McCullough's ranch, armed with the knowledge that would bring justice to their community. As they confronted him, the rancher's bravado crumbled under the weight of truth. "You can't do this," he shouted, but the crowd had no patience for his lies. With the sheriff's presence, justice was served, and McCullough was taken into custody for his schemes. Bill watched as the townsfolk rallied together, their faces illuminated with hope. Clara's spirit, he sensed, was at peace now that the truth had been unveiled. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of orange and gold, Bill stood beside Roger at the edge of the valley. "We did it, partner. We faced the shadows, and we brought the light." Roger barked happily, nuzzling against Bill's leg. From that day forward, the story of Caleb Hartman transformed from a tale of fear to one of triumph. The gold mine was rediscovered, and the town prospered once more. Bill found his place among the people, not just as a broken cowboy, but as a beacon of courage and truth. As they walked home, the warmth of the sun on their backs, Bill felt a sense of belonging he hadn't known for a long time. The valley, once shrouded in mystery, now held the promise of a brighter future, a testament to the enduring spirit of the frontier and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog.